Nobody could hear me. I don't know how long I was muted. Thank you for whoever pointed it out. Okay, so hi, welcome. I'm Katherine D. Graham, and we are doing a live just about how much a indie book cover really costs. This is part of my Indie Author Behind the Scenes series. So today we're going to talk about just how much a cover should cost you from different kinds of companies. We're also going to talk about my experiences with sales based on those covers. And again, I want to just say this is all my personal experience with several different options for covers. I am not being paid or sponsored by any of these companies. I had to pay full price for all of the covers that you see on the screen. So this is all 100% honest, open feedback, and I would love to hear your questions as we go through. I'm an open book as far as that. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about free. And you see here that I got a big no on here. This was my first attempt at a cover ever. I was not even out of college when I put this book out the first time, and I decided to take a selfie, throw the selfie into an Amazon template. Selfie was free, Amazon template was free, and throw it up on Amazon. This was a bad idea. Amazon templates have sort of a look, and even if you get your own art, it can be difficult to pull off the same professional feel that a reader would be expecting if they saw like a professional, traditionally published book. And while we always say, don't judge a book by its cover, in reality, we do judge a book by its cover. So there is an option to put your book out there for free. I would say don't do that. Not because, you could be an amazing artist and that would be great, or maybe you had a service swap. That's different, where you swapped somebody else's professional cover for your cover, but you would still have to make sure that if you do it free, that the images you use are commercially licensed, which means you're allowed to use them for commercial or money-making purposes. Royalty-free does not count in the US, nor does it count in a lot of other countries, and this is where we get tripped up. You see the term royalty-free imaging, and then if you go look at the fine print, normally that is for personal, recreational use only. It is not for anything that would make you money, and a cover is supposed to make you money. So you have to get commercially licensed images, and you're stuck using a template from somebody else unless you're a designer or you traded a service like an editing job for the work. This was my only big no, don't do for the entire book cover video. So I would say hard pass on this. Next, we have our cheaper but professional options, and this is one of my favorite options for working covers. Working covers mean the book is not actually going to usually sell under this cover. I have a few exceptions to that rule. Angel's Abdication that you see there on the right, it is out with that cover, but it also cost me a little more because I needed a little more licensing for it. So getcovers.com is a great professional website. They use commercially licensed images with a caveat. You have to go into the gallery they send you and you have to find your own images, which we'll talk about in a minute. So all the images that you see in both of these photos are stock photos that I found through hours of searching in exchange for that cheaper rate. And if you're new to covers, you may not know how expensive covers can get. But if you've been cover shopping a while, you might look at this and go, wow, a $45 cover, that looks fantastic for $45. That's great. It is great. I love using them, but everywhere has its own pros and cons, which we'll get to in just a second. GetCovers.com lets you select the images from the stock photo library, which also gives you more control over what images are on your cover. And this is going to be $5 is their starting base. That is for 1 to 2 stock photos, depending on when you book. And if you want commercial licensing, you can expect to spend just a tiny bit more. If you want specialty features like the flames you see on Angel's Abdication on the right, that's going to be more. The more images that you use, because they have to pay for the commercial license for each of those images, the higher your cost is going to be. So I would expect to spend between $5 and $50 depending on how complex you want your image to be. My personal image using them has been between $25 and $45. The pros and cons to a service like Get Covers, because they're not the only ones that do that service, but the pros and cons would be that they're an affordable cover design service. They're way better than trying to do your own with a selfie. And you don't have to worry about templates. And if it is rejected by Amazon or by Barnes & Noble, they will fix it for free. If you make a mistake, like you say you want it for Ingram, but then you really wanted it for Amazon, they might charge you because that's a different size. But if they made a mistake and it didn't work, then they will fix it, and that's been fantastic. They also do bilingual covers, as you saw over here. They did my cover for Splitting Dusk, which is the one on the left, the Spanish version, and the English version. And you do have to pay twice if you want to use those images because, again, you're licensing per image. So the pro would be the affordable cover design. They're very quick with their turnaround, usually a week, sometimes 2 weeks if you have a whole lot of elements to it. Like I did one for the Mountain King through Starry Ink Press, and that had a lot of stuff, and that took like a couple weeks. But most part, it's 7 to 14 days. You get to collect your own images, which means you have more control over how your cover is going to feel, and you have no one to blame if your character doesn't look the way you wanted them to, except yourself, and the availability of characters that look like you want them to look. They also make great working covers. These are covers that you don't put on Amazon, that you don't put on Barnes & Noble. You're not making money off of them. If you wanted a $5 or $10 or $15 cover just to have a placeholder cover and you don't need the commercial use license, this would be the way to go. The cons, however, to using a service like this, where it is basically taking stock photos and putting them into a designer template, is you're limited on the characters you have to choose from because these are stock photos. And that also means you're limited by the ones you can personally find. I have spent 5-6 hours looking through stock photos to find images, and if you equate that to how much time you could spend working at however much your hourly rate is, there's part of your fee right there. There are very strict licensing limits based on the image, and since you're responsible on going image by image, make sure you click the licensing details while you're looking. Some will be commercial use okay, some will not. Some will explicitly only be royalty free, and that could be an issue. The only other really real con to this is there's no way to customize the characters, which is called character manipulation, and we'll talk about that in another service in just a second. But that means that technically your character could be used on somebody else's cover, and that is never a good thing. So yes, you're getting a cheap cover, but this actually happened with me in my Splitting Dusk cover. The main character that you see in the middle on the cover on the left showed up on somebody else's cover for their lead magnet. And so when our books are in the same promotions, it looks like it's the same main character in both books, and our books are in no way related, and that is not a good thing. So I actually will be revamping and getting custom covers for all of my books this year. But that's something to keep in mind if you're going to actually publish the book with the character from this and not just use it as a working cover or a placeholder, that someone else could potentially get the same character as you. So if you have a little bit more room in your budget, there is actually a world of creative custom covers that you can get in the $110 range to $200 range through companies like getpremades.com. There are also other companies that I've looked at that also sell premades, which are great. A lot of cover designers will do custom covers for somebody, and then something won't work out with them. It wasn't what they envisioned, and they'll turn around and sell it as a premade. And that can be a great affordable option in that under $200 range. I personally got both the covers you see on your screen from Get Premades. These are commercially licensed images, and though they are stock photos, they are photos that came with the rights to manipulate the images and change things like the character's hair color, the character's outfits, The background, things that you don't have permission to always do with regular royalty-free or some of the more limited commercial use. Now, for that difference, not only are you paying the difference for the designer to go in and create the backgrounds and change the hair color and change the outfits and things like that, but you're also paying the extra for the extra license. So this will quickly add on to your cost. I think you'll quickly find with cover design, if you're using stock photos, the licenses eat up way more capital than you realize. But the designers will pick the images that are used on your cover. If you go to getpremades.com, these covers are already made. That means no looking around for you. Oh, and I spent about $145 on my Splitting Dawn cover. It was listed at $130, and I paid a little extra to have Lunev, that's the character on the right-hand side next to Kira. I had his hair changed to white. He's a vampire elf, and his hair was supposed to be white. And then in Phoenix of Sand and Glass, I changed the background tremendously and added that fire in the background. I left the main character as is, and so I had to pay for the image that you see in the background, and then of course the effect on her in Phoenix of Sand and Glass. So the pros to using a pre-made seller would be that they're affordable, way more affordable than usually if you paid for that exact same cover custom. They have professional art. They can be photo manipulated, which means even if that stock photo is somewhere else, chances are the character will look very different. The original version of the guy you see here in the photo as Lunev had a mustache and a little bit of a beard and black hair, and he looks very different here. So it can be unique to your story. Pre-made covers are available quickly because they're already made. You don't have to wait on somebody to make them. If you like them as is and don't need to change hair colors or anything, you can walk out with them the same day, and that's really nice. Then you can sort of factor in the rush fee as part of your pros here. The cons to using these are you can only really get minor changes for free. This is going to be your title, your author name, maybe a slight adjustment to font. So for example, when I got Splitting Dawn, I wanted it to match my Splitting World series, and so that scrolling title you see there and that font is the font that's going to be on the rest of my Splitting Worlds books, and they can do that for you. Other than that, when you need changes like Lunev's hair, you're going to have to pay a little extra for those new images that have to be licensed. Then there's licensing limitations on Get Premades. You're getting a huge deal, but there are limitations, and they will send you, if you go to Get Premades, they'll send you the links to the individual images, and you have to buy additional licenses for each specific image that are in your cover in order to put them on merchandise, in order to use them on social media posts. You can't just take your cover, pick it apart, and throw Lunev's face on a beautiful coffee mug. You have to actually factor that in, and each of those images cost between $5 and $10. So make sure you count how many images are in there and you determine whether that's something that is worth those additional fees. No, you don't have to pay the additional fees when you're using it as a cover. So if you have like the cover mock-ups where it's your cover in real life and it's in a background, you don't have to pay extra for that, but you do have to pay extra when you're only using a close-up on one of the characters' faces and you cut out the background or something like that. At that point, it's considered a different use of that image, and the people who created that image want to get paid for it. And then important to note, with Get Premade specifically, they are very clear that you are not the owner of the art. You're using a third-party license. They have a license that they bought in bulk that gives them discounts, and they make the cover and give you a sub-license. Then they give you the links to get your own licenses for the merch. But even then, you're just using licenses. You're not an actual owner. That's really important to note if you're going to move on down the line and use this art for other things. Okay, so if you need something that is custom, there are custom options out there for you. MIBL Art, which is where I got the two covers you see on your screen here. They are custom. They do use stock photos, or they can do 100% illustrated covers from scratch. So I know that some of my text got cut off here. Sorry, guys. But basically, they also use commercial licensed custom images. They can be 100% illustrated or manipulated from stock photos. I typically go the stock photo route just because it's a little more affordable, and I love the look of them anyway once they're manipulated a little bit. But their animated covers are also pretty. The cost for a Kindle Vella cover, which is way cheaper than the other covers, standard book covers, is $99 right now. This is May 9th, 2022. That price can always change. The Kindle Vella covers will be square. They will be textless. They are designed to fit inside Amazon's Kindle Vella program. Their actual covers start at $150 and go up depending on how many elements you have, how many characters are on the cover, how many effects they're going to have. And as you can see, I've got that same font style I've carried over from a couple slides back with Splitting Dawn for my Splitting Worlds box set overall. And so all of those elements have to be worked in there. So I paid about $175 by the time it was all said and done for Splitting Worlds, the box set, and then about $99 for the Kindle Vella cover from MIBL Art. The pros and cons of getting a custom cover using pre-made art is the cover design and the art will look professional. You don't have to pay MIBL Art until you're happy with your cover, and this is specific to them. Most cover designers will require a deposit, 10%, 25%, 50% upfront, and then if you're happy with the job upon completion, you owe them the rest of the money. And if you're not, then you're out your deposit. It gives you 100% original character art if you want to go the illustrated route. But as I said here, full illustration is going to cost $199 to $299 for a company like MIBL Art. So factor that in as far as whether you want to do that and look at their portfolio before deciding to go that route. Longer delivery time is always a key element when you have a custom cover. If you are not using stock photos and you're not using stock templates, they have to create that stuff from scratch. And if they're drawing it for you by hand, it's going to take you several weeks. So just build that time frame into your release. The base of $150 is very unlikely to be your final price. Again, it comes down to how many characters you want on your cover. Like I have 2 on Splitting Worlds. What effects you want, like you see the red and the blue on there, the font and all of that, and that's all going to be $5 here, $10 there. But they will quote you if you ask them before you place their order. And all good cover artists I've ever worked with do quote you, whether this is on Fiverr or Upworks or Readsy. They will quote you and say, for what you're describing, I would charge blank. And get that in writing and save it. And again, here, if you're using the stock photo version where they're manipulating existing stock photos, there will be licensing limitations. Just like the pre-mades, you're going to have to buy your own licenses if you're wanting to use it for merchandise or social media images where you cut a character out. And you are also not the owner of the stock photo art. Now, you are the owner of the fully illustrated from scratch covers, but not stock photo art. You're using a third-party license. So now we get into the crown jewel that everybody likes to talk about. Custom covers, 100%. These are $400 starting range to $3,000 average. Now, this is as of May 2022. I have been looking for custom art for my covers, for my press, for the last 3.5 weeks, and these are the numbers that I pulled. These numbers are based on how many characters you have on your cover, 3,000 being 2 fully hand-drawn custom art with no stock images at all, and you owning all commercial rights to the art, meaning that's your art. Once they sell it to you, it is yours. So 100% custom cover with commercially used images, because even then, when you buy art from somebody, it's not enough to just buy the art. You have to make sure you're buying the rights to use that art in other places. And the covers you see here on this picture were designed by Jesh Art Studio Group. Some of this they designed on their own. Some of this, like the background on the Violet Twisted Fate, was a stock photo that I agreed to use in the art piece, but you can also have the entire thing custom drawn if you wish. So things to consider though. When you do these covers, you're commissioning a piece of art. You're not just saying, hey designer, go find some art pieces that already exist and throw it into a template, which is always cheaper. Instead, you're commissioning actual art. So make sure that you ask them in their quote to tell you how much they will charge you to alter the piece. I'm going to skip back one more time. If you look at the Violet Twisted Fate and you imagine that with no text on it, no Katherine D. Graham, no title, that would be the art piece that you've commissioned. From there, a designer, if the artist doesn't do it, is going to have to add on that text, and they are going to want a license showing that they have permission to alter the piece. So you need to make sure that you ask the person doing your art, do they give you permission to alter the piece by adding fonts, etc.? Make sure you get it in writing and ask them what the fee is for that. And also add a commercial use license. This is not going to be a commissioned piece for personal use. As pretty as it is, you want to use it to sell books, and you need to have them sign over those rights to you, and they will charge you for them. So right now I have a cover in the works with a very talented artist. Her cover with commercial use license was $500. Add $100 to be able to put text on the piece. That's $600 for a fully licensed piece for my press. Jesh Art Studio Group, who did these, they charge $400 base. They charge another $50 if you want a wrap, which means it's going to go around a paperback and a hardback. They charge another $25 to make it commercial use. So the Violet Twisted Fate came out to be a $475 cover, which was still really affordable. It would have been higher if I had made them do custom art in the background instead of using that stock photo though. And then make sure you vet your artists thoroughly. Work step by step through the process alongside them, and expect to have to pay a portion of the fee up front. Now, I would not pay a artist 100% up front. That is typically a big red flag. Just like they wouldn't do the work for free up front. There has to be some trust somewhere. If you go through a platform like Fiverr or you go through a platform like Reedsy, it's a little different because you have customer service that can help you get your money back if things go wrong or if the seller vanishes. But if you are doing this one-on-one, you have recommendation from a friend or from another author or from an artist, or you find them on DeviantArt, you want to make sure that you're all covered. Send them a small percentage. They start on the work. You work back and forth. Maybe you set up milestones. When it hits this stage, I'll pay you this. When it hits that stage, I'll pay you that. But just be careful when you get into that. Now, this higher fee, this $3,000 fee, is a fee that was quoted to me by Elise Kova's cover artist. Not her cover designer, the person that puts the font and all that stuff on there. Her cover artist for one of my books for Starry Ink Press. It'd be $1,500 for a certain amount of characters. It'd be $3,000 for another amount of characters, and that does not include merchandising rights. That only includes the book cover rights and the commercial use for that cover. So again, that was really important to add on. It's going to be an extra couple $1,000s if I decide to buy the rights to put that cover on photo or on prints or on merchandise like t-shirts or cards or whatever I want to do that for. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're wanting to get into the author swag and you're wanting to do all of that and you're getting custom art and you're getting it from a well-known source, you're going to have some really high fees. And so at this point, it comes down to how much do you make off of a cover? And in full transparency, your cover sells your book more than anything else. Readers decide whether or not they want to click on your book, not because they've read your blurb, but because first they looked at your cover and your cover was like, wow. And if that wow isn't there, or that, ooh, I've got to see more about that isn't there, then there's a high chance they're just not going to click through to your book. So investing in your cover is investing in the most important part of your marketing, is what I found at this point. I'm not going to say have it all figured out. That's why I'm going to have to go back and rebrand all of my Splitting Worlds books that have just the commercial use image stock photos on them instead of custom art. I'm going to have to get those all fixed. But I'm not seeing the click rates on those that I see on the book with the custom art, because it's just not as eye-catching. It is pretty. It's a really professional cover. It's a great working cover. And I'm going to see if I can pull it back up here one more time and just let you look. These are great covers, but when you compare it to a cover like The Vow That Twisted Fate, at the end of the slide, it's just a noticeable difference. So you have to ask yourself what style speaks to your readers and says, oh, that's a Katherine book. When I saw that art, I knew that was Katherine D. Graham's book. When I saw that art, I knew that was so-and-so's book. Make sure that what style that you like and what style you start with is a style that your readers are going to recognize throughout. And I'm working on getting a live put together to talk to a cover designer about things like that, so I won't go into too much detail on that tonight. But this gives you sort of an idea. You can expect to get a cover from anywhere from $25, if you're okay going with that get covers type option, up to $400 to $500 for more custom looking manipulated images. And then if you're wanting 100% illustrated from scratch, my commission that I have going right now for The Light Keeper, which is coming out with Starry Ink Press, that's Christina Wallace's middle grade fantasy, that one will cost me $600. Kristen says, yeah, that's a big difference. It is, and the quality is just a big difference. So it'll be about $600 for 100% custom art that has no stock images in it at all, which is still very affordable. I would say if a cover design company wants to charge you $6,000 or $8,000 for one cover, to check them out thoroughly, but I highly recommend you run. If you're familiar with fantasy at all and you've looked into Elise Kova's covers and you say she wants $1,500 to $3,000 to do a cover design, and then you look at somebody else who wants $6,000 and often using stock photos, run. I wouldn't personally pay that much for a stock photo cover. Not when I could get a stock photo cover from MIBL Art, like you see here with Splitting Worlds, for $175, or these two from Get Premades. I just don't personally see the point in spending thousands. But that is, of course, completely up to you. So I appreciate everybody jumping on. Do you guys have any questions at all before I hop off tonight? I know this is sort of a big deal if you're doing writing at all. It's like, oh, I want the cover so bad. I have one other piece of advice from my personal mistake to hand out before I get off tonight, and you guys can type any questions you have while I'm doing that. But that is, be patient on your final cover until your book is completely written, completely edited, and completely formatted. With The Vow That Twisted Fate, $475 was my base cost. I then finished writing the book and cut, thanks to my editor, a lot of scenes that didn't need to be there out, which took the length of my book down tremendously, about 20,000 words, which then cut the page count down tremendously. And what ended up being a 400-page book is now a 320-page book, and that affects the spine width, which means the entire template had to be done, which meant $35 for template change on the hardback, $35 for template change on the paperback. It was $70 of mistakes that I could have just done away with by being patient. So what I tell people is, if you have to have a cover to give yourself something to see and work toward and be excited about and hype up your readers, consider doing that very first type of cover from Get Premades, the $5 or $10 or $15 cover that you don't have to have commercial use for because you're not making sales with it. Put it out there, and then save your official cover for when your book is completely done, completely ready. Let the cover be the last thing that you get before you announce it to the world. And then not only do you have that hype to drive your pre-orders and stuff, but you also have saved yourself a chunk of change. Oh, Kristen, thank you so much for joining. So I know this is new and a lot. If you're watching the replay and there was a question that you had, or a suggestion, or a cover designer that you really love, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Again, I'm not endorsed by any of the companies I've mentioned today. I had to pay full price for all of my covers, and it's my cover, so I'm sharing them. But they don't even know I'm doing the video, so this is an unpaid review of their work. I'm always open to hearing about new covers and excited just to continue to connect with people in the community. So stay tuned. Coming up within the next few weeks, we have a lot coming in our Indie Author Behind the Scenes series. We're going to have a chat this Saturday, May 14th, with 2 indie authors that got their books in Barnes & Noble bookstores, and we're going to figure out how they did it as a self-published author. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell if you'd like to see how they pulled that off. We're also going to have some conversations with a multi-award-winning international best-selling author, Casey Freeman, who is also an indie author, as well as some other authors coming up in the next few weeks between now and the end of May. So thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you on another video. Bye, everybody.